Finally, more options are starting to arrive on the EV scene here in Australia. There's still nothing truly affordable, but in the semi-premium and premium parts of the market, you can now choose from lots of different electric cars, not just Teslas. This Mercedes is a case in point. This car is the EQB 350, a very boxy, very practical SUV with dual motor all-wheel drive. You can even get this car with 7 seats if you're okay with front-wheel drive, and that's for less than $100,000 drive away. Kind of interesting that you can get a 3-row, 3-pointed star with an electric motor for that price at this time, in my opinion. But in today's video, we're going to be looking at the EQB 350, the dual motor 5-seat version that I have here behind me. First of all, I'm going to tell you exactly how much range this car gets in our Chasing Cars range test, and how quickly you can go from 50 to 350 k's of highway range in the Chasing Cars charging test. Then we'll have a look at the interior and take the EQB for a drive to see whether this electric SUV is worth your money. Before you get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Chasing Cars has developed our own real-world highway range and charging tests, which can be more realistic than manufacturer claims. For our real-world range test, we drive a 200-kilometre loop of varied highway terrain at 100 kilometres per hour. Next, using the car's real-world range, we time how long it takes to recharge from 50 to 350 k's of highway range. Our test stays consistent across all EVs, rewarding efficient cars and quick recharging rather than just big batteries. So, how did the EQB 350 do on our tests? On our highway loop, we used 17.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres for a real-world range of 373 k's. That's 5% less than the claim, but it is decent for the EQB's power and size. The EQB can be recharged at speeds up to 112 kilowatts. Charging from 50 to 350 k's of highway range took a slow 42 minutes flat and required 53.4 kilowatt hours for an average speed of 84 kilowatts. Being based on the combustion-powered GLB means the EQB's interior is very familiar and also very conventional. And many EV buyers don't want to feel like they're driving a science experiment. And in the EQB, you aren't. It's just a classic modern Mercedes-Benz dashboard, and I personally like that. That being said, the EQB doesn't have the same level of standard equipment as a high-end GLB. For instance, we're sitting on part Dynamica, part leatherette seats, even in this EQB 350, which costs over $100,000 drive away and more like $125,000 as tested as we're sitting here. And in fact, the seats are manually adjusted. I can't remember the last time I saw that on any Mercedes above a base model. Not that I really care because, well, if you're the only person driving the car most of the time, you can still get the seat into a nice position. You've got a roller for under thigh angle, a roller for backrest, and you've still got electric lumbar. So very comfortable seat, even if it's not easy to adjust electrically like normal. Now, this car has an AMG package as standard if you go for the EQB 350, and that means you get this flat bottom steering wheel, perforated here and with red stitching too. Plus this car has the Edition 1 package being optioned onto it. I could probably live without that, but I do like the open pore linden wood trim. That looks very presentable. Moving on to the infotainment, we've got twin 10-inch screens up here. They're controllable through these trackpads on the steering wheel, although the central one is actually a touchscreen, and the Mercedes system is nice and easy to use. It's also got wired Apple CarPlay, but not yet wireless because the EQB doesn't have the latest Mercedes-Benz infotainment system like what you get in a C-Class or S-Class. Love these aviation-style air vents though, nice and easy to keep the cabin cool. And the sunroof is panoramic and it opens as well, which is actually not that common on EVs for some reason. Again though, I don't think the EQB 350 is necessarily the spec that you need. The EQB 250 still has a very high level of interior quality, but it doesn't have the AMG bits. You can option a lighter colored interior, which I think is particularly attractive, and the significant price decrease compared to the all-wheel drive EQB 350 gives you some money to spend on options like electric front seats. As you can probably immediately see, the space on offer in the back seat of the EQB is very generous. It's quite a large 5-seat SUV, it's very boxy, so this second row can be positioned fairly far back. I've already mentioned that you can do a third row as well if you go for the front drive, but not here in the EQB 350. Now for myself at 6 foot, headroom is fine. I've got quite a bit of it. Legroom's good, toe room's good, but you can probably also see a problem in that my knees are really high. And this is a really common issue with EVs that have skateboard battery location. That means that the battery is taking up a rectangle on the floor of the car, pushing up the floor. The glass house is fixed with the petrol car, and that means that your legs end up around your ears, whereas there's normally a nice cutout here in the combustion version that keeps your legs closer to the seat base. In future, I expect to see more manufacturers fix this by getting creative with battery cell layouts under the car, but we're not quite at that point yet, and as such, the ergonomics are not perfect in the second row of the EQB. I also bang my leg on, or my knee on this rather hard piece of plastic here. But otherwise, most of the materials are high quality, it feels luxurious. We've got map pockets, air vents, USB-C charging, and a flip-down armrest with individual cup holders. Very bougie. All in all, the visibility is good, there's lots of room, it's just the floor plan itself could be a little bit lower. Here around the back of this mountain grey EQB 350, you see one of the signatures that Mercedes is kind of developing for its electric cars, and that's this full width light bar, which makes the EQB look different to the GLB petrol SUV that it's based upon. Whether or not you like that is subjective. I think it kind of looks a little alien, a little weird, and I like that. Now, behind this power tailgate, you'll find the EQB's 495 litre boot. There's space for your traveling charging cables. Most people won't need to take those around with them everywhere they go, but it's a good boot. We've got straps here so that wine bottles and stuff don't roll around. We've got a carpet mat underneath the boot floor. You've got a tire compressor and goo kit, so we don't have a spare wheel in this car, but it's a practical space. Big, high quality cargo blind as well. And of course, if you go for the front wheel drive model, which is a lot cheaper than this car, you can even get a small third row back here, which is very practical indeed. Okay, so the EQB looks a little unusual outside, but kind of in a charming way. What's it like to drive when you equip it with the EQB 350 powertrain, which is the pretty beefy dual motor all-wheel drive system in this electric SUV? Well, the numbers tell a lot of the story. It's generously equipped, 215 kilowatts of power and 520 Newton meters of torque, which is plenty of twisting force in this SUV, and that's exactly how it feels. It's strong off the line, it's strong for passing, it feels like an elegant sufficiency of power in this car, more than most people would need, which is why, unless you plan on somehow getting snow chains on these massive Edition 1 wheels and taking it into the snow for family holidays, it's why I think you probably are going to be just fine going with the EQB 250, which has 140 kilowatts of power, so still not a weak motor. But then of course you take some load off the rear axle, which is the reason why you can't get a 7-seat configuration in Australia in the 350. And of course you get that extra practicality from the 250. That being said, there's not a huge amount of character to the way the EQB drives. Instead of being characterful or interesting, instead it's really just competent, and that's fine because basic competency in disciplines like ride quality and body control are actually not that common in electric cars, full stop. I'm a hard marker when it comes to ride and handling. I get that. I think that's what the job is meant to be about. And the EQB 350 actually does really remarkably well here. It rides well, it's reasonably firm. You do feel bigger bumps in the road, but it's never crashy, it's never uncomfortable, and even on concrete road surfaces, it's actually perfectly settled, even if you do feel some of those imperfections, or at least the tires moving through them. Equally, the handling is not sporty, but it's not boaty either. It's middle of the road, and the steering it's quite a quick ratio, and it's very light through the steering wheel. So Mercedes have concentrated on making the EQB just easy to drive, comfortable to drive. It's not going to cause the kids car sickness, and it's going to be nice and stable and secure on those country road trips that you might be considering taking the car on. And to that bent, if I was going to make an improvement to the car at facelift time, it'd really be concentrating around perhaps giving it a slightly bigger battery, slightly increasing the energy efficiency even further, but also giving it higher recharging speed. There's nothing that wrong with the range of the EQB 350. It's just that the relatively slow charging means that you're going to be held up on your road trips waiting to get power back into the car when competitors are much quicker to recharge. But refinement is pretty good. It's not too loud in here. That means you can actually enjoy the acoustics of the optional and excellent Burmester stereo in this car. And also the safety features are nice and well tuned too. So we've got adaptive cruise, we've got lane centering, blind spot monitoring, and a very crisp 360-degree camera, all of which are good. But the last comment I'll make is that oftentimes when a combustion car is turned into an EV, the driving experience really suffers. That's not the case in the EQB. It still feels really well made, well put together, and settled on the road rather than a dodgy ICE to EV conversion like some feel. So those are my opinions on the new Mercedes-Benz EQB in all-wheel drive EQB 350 trim. I don't think this is the perfect EQB to buy. I would actually save a bit of money and go for the front-wheel drive EQB 250, which you can option with 7 seats, which just give you that nice little bit of extra practicality when you got to take 2 more people and stuff them in the back row. Fantastic. In the dual motor all-wheel drive version, you're limited to 5 very generous seats, which will suit some families fine, and of course the additional pace and traction are nice to haves. But the bottom line is that the EQB is really pleasant to drive. It could do with a slightly bigger battery to give it more range, particularly in town, but the way it is now, for suburban families, this should be heaps. And it's good to see Mercedes innovating and pushing into this area and giving Australian families more all-electric options, even if they are a little expensive as tested in EQB 350 form. Keen to know your views, so let me know down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.